everyone, and welcome to K-Star Coaching's Growth Accelerator for September. We are so glad to have you today. And thank you to all of you that are returning from last month. I know that we had a great discussion in August, and I love hearing your feedback. Thank you so much. To any of you that did not participate in August yet and you want to get in on that, feel free to shoot us an email, send us a message, and we can make sure that we get you that video so that you can get caught up. But now that we are in September, we're going to dive right in. Everybody ready? So get out your notebooks, your pens, and let's get started, because this month we are talking about setting our vision. Oh my goodness. So for those of you that did participate in August, you know that we got the chance to dream, right? We really got the chance to dig into what it is that we've thought about. Maybe we put it in the back of our minds and tried not to really pay attention to it. Maybe we've tried to even push it off to the side and say it wasn't possible. But discussion last month really brought that to the surface, and you know that those are the things you want to go after this year. So we are going to tackle that. Now, the fun part is we got to dream, and now we really get to define all that. That's what we mean by vision. So my question for you is, for those of you that remember, were you actually hitting the target this month, or are you still in the playing the pin the tail on the donkey mode? You know, sometimes we get in that space where we forget that maybe we've been blindfolded in a certain area, or we feel like there's a gap that we just haven't been able to overcome, and it gives us this feeling of playing pin the tail on the donkey and kind of shooting in the dark. We want to make sure that when we're doing this, that we are aiming for that target as much as possible. So I want to really encourage you to, again, if you haven't completed that exercise, let's get your dreams down on paper, because we're going to define them. Now, the thing that's interesting about vision is that we kind of feel like it's going to happen naturally sometimes, or like growth. We just kind of think it automatically happens. Remember when you were a kid? Did you guys have this in your house, where your mom or your dad or somebody in your family would line you up against the wall, and measure you out, and you get so excited because you grew a whole, like half an inch or whatever? Maybe you were taller than somebody else in your family. Well, we get in this mindset that we're just going to grow naturally. But like John Maxwell says, the law of intentionality says that growth doesn't just happen. Now, we know this, right? We know this in our minds, but we forget to apply it in our lives and in our workspaces. And so that's what I want to challenge you with today, is where are you intentionally growing, and when are you just kind of hoping that growth is going to continue to happen naturally? So in these spaces, we're going to intentionally grow in the area of our vision. Now, to do that, we need to use a process. We have processes for everything else in our lives. At K-Star, we actually use the value growth principles, and this process is what we use to really make sure that we're growing in the right way and in the right direction. So that it's an acronym. I like the acronyms because they make it easier for me to remember things. So here you go. So the value growth principles are vision, awareness, learning, understanding, and meeting expectations. So when we're doing this today, we're actually just going to tackle the vision part. Okay, so it's time to set our vision. This is a very important note. Before we get too far into this, I want you to do me a favor and kind of set aside all the things that maybe other people or expectations of your role, or even the way you've seen it done before, and so you kind of have that in your mind. I want you to set that aside for a second, and let's set your vision, or our vision, right? We want to make sure that this is personal and it's not just what somebody else said was a good idea. And there's a reason why. Have you guys ever kind of taken the advice of someone else and it didn't turn out so good? Well, we learned really early on that GPS is a wonderful thing, but before GPS, how many of you remember the Rand McNally maps? The big books, right? You had to pull it out and use rulers. I traveled in a group, we actually had to do that. And I won't bore you with all the details. Let's just say it did not end up well, and this kind of looked like us at one point on our road trip. The problem was that the person with the directions didn't know how to clearly communicate that to the driver, and it didn't go well in the moment. Thankfully, everybody's okay. We were all fine. But as funny as it was in the moment, we don't want to blindly follow directions from someone else. And so the thing that really gets me in this whole thing is that we end up blindly following without even realizing it. Anybody ever seen the pictures of people that end up in the middle of cornfields because their GPS took them there? Okay, let's not be that person. All right, let's not do that. Let's make sure that we are actually setting this according to our vision. Now, again, our vision needs to be clearly defined. That's why we have our lovely dartboard out here again. We want to make sure that we're clearly defining what it is that we're looking for and what this vision is going to say, because that's as important as knowing what's not on it, right? It lets us know one way or another. Vision is really an interesting word. It's actually the ability to see. That's the definition. The ability to see. So when we have a clear vision, that gives us the ability to see where we're headed. It's kind of like putting on a great pair of glasses, right? All of a sudden, I have clarity. I can see things better. I see exactly where I want to be, or even closer, maybe more clearly to where I want to be. And that way, it's easier for me to get there. If you're struggling with setting your vision, or you're not sure what direction to go, it sounds like there might be some clarity. And so let's work on that today. All right, so to do that, we need to really ask the right questions. And I'm sure you've heard this before. If you're going to know where you're headed, you need to ask the right questions and know where you want to go. Okay. These questions are kind of challenging, so I really want to give you some time to really think through them. What do you want your life to look like? You know, maybe you set a time frame of the end of the year. We kind of talked about that in our growth accelerators. What do you want it to look like on the end of December 31st, on New Year's Eve? Right? You're there in your living room. Does anybody else do this? I actually don't even go out sometimes. I love just like having the ball drop there in my house, you know, watching the TV or whatever, and really celebrating. But I also reflect a lot. I reflect on my year. I reflect on, you know, maybe what it is that I did great or that I felt like I accomplished, and then maybe some things that were hanging out there that I didn't get to. And if that's you, if that's kind of that season for you, I want to encourage you with this. Now is the time. That's why we're doing this. Now is the time to set the vision of where you want to land at the end of the year, or how you want to set your business up or yourself up for next year. Now is the time to do that. And so with this process, what we're doing is we're asking these questions. Where do you want your life to look like? Well, what do you want your life to look like by any certain time? What would you want, what would you like to add or remove from your life? Okay, you can't say family, although, well, you know, some of them we love dearly, we just might not want to keep them too close. No, the idea is, what do you want to add or remove? And this may be people, but it also may be just things. It may be mindsets. It may be distractions. It may be toys that we hang on to, but we know, you know, like, okay, it's great, but I don't need to be spending money on this. It's a hobby, and there's something else that I need to be spending my money on instead. Those kind of things really can get in the way, and if we're not clear on those, it can really be challenging. So what do you want to add or remove from your life? Is this vision supporting or detracting from your values? Personal note. So for years, as a coach, one of the things that I've known is that I need to travel more. I know that at some point I will, but for me right now in my journey, for me personally, one of my values is being able to be home with my family, being able to be there for my kids. You know, when my daughter has karate, being able to go to those karate classes and not have to worry about whether or not she'll have a parent sitting there. Things like that are important to me. And I would never want my business, even in growing it and all those good things that we can do, right? I would never want that to impede on my relationship with my daughter, or even more important, my relationship with my husband. And so these are the things that, as we value those things, that we make sure that our vision is not detracting from that. Okay? We want our vision to support it. So you know what I did instead? I figured out how I could keep my coaching locally for these years. I figured out how I could do things without traveling as much. And then now, as we're getting into a new season, now I can make travel a part of it, but again, with certain parameters. So that way, again, it's not impeding, it's not taking away from my relationship with my family. It's actually supporting it. It's something we get to do together and not just me alone. So I want to encourage you, if there's anything like that, that you're like, oh, this is really pulling on me personally, let's reevaluate, because one of the biggest ways to find something new and cool to do, or a new way to do it, is to innovate, because of remembering what the necessary components are for our values. And that's where the best innovation comes from at the end of the day. So we can innovate. We can make sure that you can be successful in your space without impeding on those values for you. Okay, so is it detracting or supporting your values? Big topic. Another one is, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Some of you have heard this question before. Maybe you haven't. If you haven't, or you have, either way, I want you to sit with it for a second. And I want to challenge you with something. You cannot say money is the reason, right, that you can't do something. Because as we know, money is nothing more than something that we trade for something else. It has a certain value, it has a certain worth. But at the end of the day, money cannot be the reason why we don't do something. Because if that is it, if that's the whole reason, then there's a whole lot more that we need to consider and talk about, okay? And I know that that's challenging for some of us. There's some of us that maybe have grown up with different mindsets. Maybe we've had other challenges that have kept us from things. I want to encourage you, you're not alone. But I also want to remind you that the greatness you have in you is far more valuable than anything that you can put a dollar sign on or a dollar amount on, okay? The value that you have in you right now is worth more than that price tag. And whatever that price tag is that you feel like is out of your reach is not worth you holding back the extreme value that's inside of you, because the world needs it, okay? And I want to encourage you with that, but I also want to ask you, if any of you are challenged by this part of this talk, please reach out to me directly. I would love to sit down and have a cup of coffee or do a quick Zoom session, something like that, so that we can talk through this, because that should never be a reason why you don't bring this greatness to the world, okay? All right, thank you. Okay, so as we're asking this question, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? It's very important, and there are things that we hold back because we feel like we are going to fail. I can tell you, even shooting this video is not the most comfortable thing in the world to me, and I will procrastinate as much as possible. Yes, that is what I do. But at the end of the day, I know that it's needed. I know that there are certain people that I want to make sure can get the message that we're putting out, and this is the best way to do it right now. So thank you to all of you that kind of suffered through my awkwardness. I appreciate you so much. And I'm so grateful that we have this opportunity to connect. All right, so in 1 or 2 sentences, you guys ready? Here's the challenge, okay? In 1 or 2 sentences, only 1 or 2, what is your vision for the end of 2023? Okay, now it doesn't have to be the end of 2023 depending on when you're watching this video. For us right now, the discussion that we're having is for the end of the year. But put it in your own context. I want to challenge you to hit pause on the video in just a second, and I want you to actually write this down. So go ahead and pause the video, write down your 1 or 2 sentences, and as soon as you're done, go ahead and come right back and we're going to have a discussion around it. All right, perfect. Okay, so we have this 1 or 2 sentences, and I am so proud of you, first of all, for working through that. I know it can be challenging. And secondly, thank you for coming back so we can talk about it. Because this 1 or 2 sentences of what your vision should be like, or what you want it to be for the end of the year, is really, really important in this journey. So each section must be clearly defined, and that's what we're talking about. So what is your 1 or 2 sentences? How is it better defining where you want to land in this season? Is it too loose still? Okay, do you look at it and it's kind of like there's a lot of gray area there? Or is it helping you get closer to your goal? Okay, so in this, if you'll see these sections, they're really basic. they're clearly defined. There are lines around them, but they're not like super cool, dramatic, or like really artistic looking. They're just basic lines with basic colors inside. So your sections they don't have to be like super crazy intense or even like super extremely detailed. As long as they're clearly defined, that is the most important thing, okay? So just make sure they're defined. They can be very simple. They don't have to be really extravagant, but just make sure they're clear. All right, so the 4 cornerstones that we talked about are what I really want to give you some direction on. So if you remember back to August, we talked about these 4 cornerstones, making sure that we are clear and that we are dreaming, and now we're going to set our vision around all of these. So remember the people cornerstone, who you want to have on your team, who you want to get on your team, and any kind of upcoming roles, and what you want those roles to really be. Define that ahead of time so that way you're looking for the right people. Your product, you want to make sure that your product is world class, that it's amazing. What is the experience that your customers or your clients are going to have? That is really important. So let's make sure that we are getting clear on our product, our process, where we're going to do this, what tools we're going to use. Do we need to even invent new tech to be able to support this initiative? Whatever that looks like, we want to get very clear on our process and make sure, again, that it's defined. And then personal. Remember, personal growth is just as important and just as valuable as business growth. It is part of it. And if we don't grow personally at the same time, we're going to find ourselves on a lopsided stool. Okay, so we don't want to do that. We don't want to be tipping every so often because of our personal life not being where it needs to be. So remember, personal growth is growing yourself, growing your strength, growing your leadership, growing who you are as a person, as a business owner, and then of course, who you want to be around, because those people really do inform where you're going to end up. So making sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people, and even if you can't find them in person, surrounding yourself with those books, those podcasts, those things that are really going to speak into your world and make sure that you are reaching those goals. Okay, so making sure your 4 cornerstones are clear is very important. All right, so as we wrap up this part of it, I want to make sure that we have another discussion really quickly, because now that we have some clarity around where we're headed, why do we still miss the target? Go ahead and pause the video. I want you to think about that. Just write down 1 or 2 words about why you still personally miss the target in your own world. So, what do you think? Why do we miss the target? I know that in our discussion for our growth accelerators here in person in the Wilmington area, we talked a lot about some things like fear. We talked a lot about making sure that we didn't allow mindsets to hold us back. Sometimes we still miss the target too because we just kind of get into this almost like a hamster wheel of just kind of getting busy and busy and busy and busy and busy. And so then in that busyness, we forget, or we get too busy that we can't stop, or we get too caught up that we can't pause for a second and do what we need to do. There's a lot of that. Busyness is not always growth. Busyness is definitely not always productive. And sometimes busyness is just busy. So let's make sure that we are hitting the target by making sure that we're clear on our goals and that we're following this process. The hardest question to answer is to define the vision, but that's why so many people get stuck and they actually never really get started. Okay? So if that's you, if you found that maybe you haven't really gotten started, I want to challenge you today to pick one of these areas, one of these sections, and really start to aim for that and see how far that gets you right away. All right, so what is the value of hitting the target? This was another part of our discussion. Sometimes we say that we have goals, but those goals just aren't simply valuable enough. I had this great conversation with one of our friends in our growth accelerator, and as we were having this discussion, the thought was, well, why do we always make sure that we walk our dog at the end of the day? If you have a dog or another pet where you would have to walk regularly, it's pretty understood that if the dog needs to go out, you take the dog out. Why is that? Well, obvious reasons. We don't want to clean up a mess, right? It's kind of not cool to have an animal, pet, and not take care of them, not let them go out and go to the bathroom. As I would tell my kids when it was their turn to walk the dog, how would you feel if you had to go to the bathroom and somebody wouldn't let you? You wouldn't like that either. So let's make sure that we do this. But it sounds so simple, but it's a real thing. We don't have to set goals around walking our dog necessarily, at least for the most part. We just kind of do it. And it doesn't matter if it's raining, a monsoon. We actually have pictures of our boys standing out walking the dogs in the middle of it was a small hurricane, but it was a hurricane around here, and they're standing there with water whipping by, and it's torrential downpour and rain boots on, and dogs are drenched, but they had to go out. And the boys were so upset with us. I mean, I shouldn't laugh, but it was kind of funny. It was their turn to walk the dogs. And so they're out there. We didn't say, no, you don't have to. The dog has to go out. Okay, I know that's a lot, but the idea is, why is it that we can do something so simple like walking the dog, as frustrating as it is? We're still walking the dog in a hurricane, but we won't just get up and send the email that we need to send. So that's my thought process today for you, is what are those things that are so simple that you say, oh yeah, it's not a problem, I should be able to do it by tomorrow. And you don't. You still don't. I still don't. I still have those things. That's why I need a coach too, right? We all need coaches to walk with us on this journey and say, hey, help me do the thing. Help me see outside of myself because I know I'm not good at everything. So what are those things that you just haven't set up as valuable enough in your life? What is it that you set as a goal, said it was a good idea, but it didn't have enough weight to really challenge you to get it done, okay? So that's one of the things that we really want to bring to light here. Have you actually counted the cost for this goal that you have on your vision board? Have you counted the cost? Again, is it worth enough for you to actually follow through on it? Or is it just kind of, it's okay, it won't be a big deal? Because if it's that one, I guarantee you are probably not going to get it done. All right, so let's figure out how to add some value to it. Weigh the options. Have you actually weighed the options of what would happen if you do it and what would happen if you don't? Sometimes something simple now in today doesn't seem like a big deal, but if we count the cost of not doing it over time and that consistency, it really does have a big impact. People talk about saving money all the time. They say, what if I just put away a little bit right now? It wouldn't have much impact in the next year, maybe the next few years. But 15, 20 years down the road, that's gonna be a pretty good chunk of money. And so again, what are those things that we just need to weigh the options and make sure that we're moving in the right direction? And then also, have you made the key decisions? Because to use the analogy of going back to walking the dog, have you made the key decision to actually get up morning, lunch, and dinner, and actually, make sure you walk the dog? have you made that decision too? And if you haven't, what's stopping you? If you have not made that key decision to actually do the thing and adjust your schedule accordingly, what is stopping you? Okay, so now, this is one of my favorite sayings. Anybody that knows me will probably hear me say it quite often. The process you're using is perfectly designed to get the result that you're getting. And this is Pastor Mike Ashcraft here in Wilmington, North Carolina. I will tell you that this phrase comes back in great conversations with my coaching clients, wonderful conversations with my children, and it also comes back to haunt me when there's something I need to fix in myself. So I will tell you, it's across the board. But whatever process you're using, if you get to the end result and you don't like the result that you're getting, it's time to fix the process. So let's reverse engineer that a little bit, shall we? All right, so a quick side note, I just want to do a caveat here because a note for teams. Now remember, we just talked about the result that you're getting. If you have a team, if you have a business, and if you have more than 2 people, you have a team. If you're in this team or this business, this organization, and you're not liking the results and you're not seeing consistency and hitting the target, let's revisit some of the reasons why. And some of those are this. First of all, have you clearly defined the vision? Have you made it clear? You may have a vision that looks like a target board in your own mind, but have you written it out? Have you actually designed it, drawn it out, written it out in ways that everybody can define it, understand it, and make sense of it? Okay, so have you clearly defined the vision? Has it been communicated from the top down? Notice this verbiage right here, from the top down. We're not talking about just the employee that comes in tomorrow, did they hear the vision statement? And we're not talking about just the manager that's been here for 15 years, do they know the vision statement? We're talking about from the top down, owner, all the way to the person that just started an hour ago. Do they understand what our company is actually about? And if they don't, I can guarantee you that we're not going to hit our target. Okay? So let's make sure that it's clearly defined and everybody from the top down is on board. Because does everyone understand and have they bought in? People can't buy into something that they've never heard, and they can't buy into something that isn't clearly defined. Okay? Another way we can say that is a confused mind never buys. So if you want to make sure that they're going to buy into something, make sure there's no confusion. That would be really helpful. Okay, so just a side note as we're wrapping this up, men are not prisoners of fate. They're only prisoners of their own minds. Whenever we talk about this, I love this because there's actually another picture of Roosevelt when he's in his wheelchair. And because of that handicap, that physical handicap that he had, he was so inspiring to so many, politics aside, just as a person, as a human being with a physical handicap that most would say would disqualify him from so many things. And he refused to let it stop him in so many ways. And if you don't have a privilege to know someone that has overcome huge obstacles like that, I want to encourage you to find those people in your world and get around them. They will inspire you just by showing up. But here's the thing, we make ourselves prisoners in our own minds so many times and we don't even realize it. So in this discussion, if there's anything that you've heard in this talk today, maybe even in August, where you've been like, yeah, no, and you almost like want to just dismiss it right away, I want to challenge you to go back and make sure that you're not imprisoning yourself. Please go back and make sure that you are not just dismissing it because of your own lens or because of something you've heard in your life. Because in the end, this is not about me or you being right or wrong. This is about you and me and everybody else around us actually fulfilling the thing that we were put on earth to do. And so many times, like I said earlier, we stop short of that because of mindsets, because of some kind of experience we've had, because of people around us that are saying certain things. If that's you, please do not allow yourself to be imprisoned in your own mind. All right, so discussion time. You ready? We've already had a little bit of discussion today, but I would just want to wrap this up because, again, Growth Accelerator is not just about listening to me talk all the time. Thank God. This would be really boring if that's what this is all about. It is not at all. This is actually about collaborating together. This is about encouraging each other. This is about really digging through and talking through these areas that have held us back for so long. And so in this discussion time, we're really going to dig into the vision. Now, it's a little bit of an interesting one. Okay. Don't look at the questions yet. Okay, so I want to ask you something. Did you ever in elementary school-ish, maybe even middle school, where you're doing math, and which was not my favorite subject, by the way, but it's fine, it's fine. I'm sorry to all my math teachers. Anyways, so did you ever take a math class and you were doing your little math problem for your homework, and then the teacher said, if you want to check your work, do it like this. So if you're doing addition and you want to check your work, make sure you do the subtraction side of it to make sure that it's correct, right? Multiplication and division, you do the same thing. So whenever you're doing that, we want to be able to check our answers so that we can make sure we got the right ones. That's what this is doing for us today. Okay, so I want you to pull out that 1 or 2 sentences that you wrote down about your vision, and we're going to compare it with these questions again. All right, you ready? So for our discussion time today, this is what we're talking about. You take your 1 or 2 vision sentences and you say, what do you want your life to look like at the end of the year? Okay, and then you look at your vision sentences and you say, did it do that? Did these vision sentences actually define that for me? Did it make it more clear, or did it make it more like pin the tail on the donkey again? All right, if that's you, let's go back and revisit. Okay, let's tweak those sentences a little bit because we want them to really tell us what we want our life to look like or what we're working towards in this time frame. Also, what would you want to add or remove from your life in this? And it may not say anything about removing, it's only 1 or 2 sentences, but it may say something about adding. If anything else, it may be opening the door for you to add those things that you want or to remove those things that you don't want. Make sure that that's included in this 1 to 2 sentences, okay? Let's get some clarity around it. My next question is this vision supporting or detracting from your values? Remember we were talking about our core values are those things that drive us forward every day. They're our why. A lot of times we'll say it that way. They're our why. And if your why is being challenged by this vision, then let's revisit that. Let's make sure that it's aligned better. So in these 1 or 2 sentences, is it supporting or detracting from your values? And then the last question is, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? So in these 1 or 2 sentences, did you hold something back? Did you maybe write down something that was a little bit less than maybe you could have said, but you were just a little uncertain? You're like, let me make sure it's something that I can really hit. Okay, these are things that we really need to consider. We need to make sure that we're doing that check. We're checking our answers, right? And we're making sure that we can actually hit these goals. Because at the end of the time, if you knew you couldn't fail, really just becomes more that prison of our own mind that we were talking about a minute ago. And so when you start to see things a little bit differently, all of a sudden this vision becomes bigger than you thought it could be. And that's the exciting part. Okay, I know this is some challenging work today, and I know we've worked through a lot of things, but I just want to thank you. I want to thank you so much for being a part of this group. Again, if I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you in person, I would love to do so. I would love to set up a coffee or a chat or a phone call just to connect for a moment, and to hear what's going on in your world and to make sure that we are bringing all the resources that we can to help you on this journey. Secondly, you'll see some information after the video, but if you have not already, please make sure that you are connecting with us on our Growth Accelerator group. It is through Facebook right now, and we would love to have you join that community, not just to chat with me, but to chat with all of our wonderful group members, because there are some amazing business people in this world, and they are a part of our Growth Accelerators, encouraging, challenging, and even holding each other accountable. We would love to have you be a part of that. Last thing, thank you for being a part of this world. Thank you for bringing your light and your love and your joy in the way that only you can. And if no one else has told you today, you are amazing. So get out and get the thing done, because we need you. Thank you again. Have a great day, and I can't wait to see you next month. Bye-bye.